Welcome to the ParentNet podcast by Focus on the Family Singapore. In each episode, we will be speaking with everyday parents and practitioners as they share with us gems from their parenthood journey. Keep tuning in to learn with us as we figure it out together.
Hello and welcome to the ParentNet podcast. My name is Aaron and I'm your host for this episode. When people talk about being a parent, the focus often lands on moms, and understandably so. But new fathers go through a profound transition too, one that's quieter, less understood, and often unsupported. So what do new fathers actually need? Today we are unpacking the emotional, relational, and practical realities of early fatherhood, and what needs to change so dads don't have to figure it out alone. With us in the studio today are two young dads, Benedict and Daniel Lopez. Ben and Daniel, it's so good to have you on the podcast.
Hi Aaron, thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks Aaron.
Daniel, can you share with our listeners a bit about yourself?
So I'm Daniel, I'm 29 this year. I've been married for 2.5 years, been a dad for 1.5 years to a young boy of 18 months old. I'm a social worker that's been working in the sector for about 4 to 5 years.
And Ben, a bit more about yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Ben. I've been married for coming to 5 years now. Yeah, I have a 19-month-old daughter and my wife and I find her really cute. We talk about her every night. And I'm currently working at Focus as a staff. I do research here at Focus.
Glad to have both of you on the ParentNet
thank you.
podcast. So first question off the bat for Daniel, okay. What was one of the biggest struggle that you faced, being a new dad?
Wow, my wife and I, we still talk about the first 6 months of being a parent. And I severely underestimated how stressful it will be. I'm a Singaporean son, so I excel through 10-year series, and I have a 10-year series for everything. And suddenly, although I read 2 to 3 books before my boy was born, when he came, there was immense joy and immense stress. I didn't know what I didn't know. And actually, I found that I didn't know the language of help. I didn't know how to articulate that I needed help. So that plus the shift in identity. I find that the identity of the father is one of the biggest identity any man would take on. But somehow trying to reorganize my life around it, it was very stressful, right? How do I structure my career, time with friends, extracurricular activities? How do I be a good husband? Learning to do life again in a vastly different form and to be completely available while struggling with my own capacity myself. It was a challenge, but I think it was necessary because I feel that my life is a bit more orderly and much more peaceful as compared to when I wasn't a parent. Ironically. Yeah.
No, I hear you. I am a dad of a toddler as well. Yeah, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
How about you, Ben? What's one of the biggest struggles you face?
No, I completely identify with what Daniel has just shared, right? There's no manual, right, to parenting. Every child comes out different. We were just talking about, how in the early years, our key job as a parent is, how do we keep our child alive?
Yeah.
Right? And then now, now that they're more active, right? You have a 16-month-old, right? I have a 19-month-old, so very similar in life stage. So they're so active now. And then our question is now, how do we keep them safe, right, from themselves? Yeah, so I think there's that daily challenge, right, and learning and growing together with our children. But I was just reflecting yesterday, right, about what's the key challenge that I face now in this period of life. I realized for me, I feel that I'm not giving enough undivided attention to my child. And I think I'm coming from a position of having the privilege of being able to work flexibly. So I'm able to pick up my child from, let's say, 4:30 from school. But then I realized I have a 3-hour window with her, which is fantastic, right, before she goes to sleep. But I realized in that 3-hour window, I still feel like, hey, I need to be present at work. So I'm on my phone. Then I also need to feed her, right? So I need to prepare dinner. And then I realized actually there's very little time for us to bond. And just yesterday, I was with her. I had that 20-minute window with her where I didn't need to cook for her, right? But there was a work message. And all I did was take a glance on my phone and I started typing. And she actually noticed. And she started crying and wanting to hug me. And I put my phone away. But at the back of my head, I was still thinking about work because I felt like it's still my working hours, right? So I should be as present as I can. But right there, my child was needing me, and I felt so guilty at that point.
So, Ben, as you're saying this, many dads have this pressure to be always on top of things, right? To be strong, to be doing well. Do you also feel this way too? And how does it actually prevent us from getting the help that we need sometimes?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the whole thing about the example I was mentioning from yesterday, right? I felt like I wanted to excel at both in work and being a parent. And the heart I have for myself was I want to contribute to meaningful work while still being able to be present.
Yeah.
But there was only time and space for one. So I have to learn when I need to ask for help. And I think it was a journey of being able to learn to do that. I'll give another example. My wife and I, we live alone. We made the decision early on to say, okay, we want to raise our daughter, just both of us, because we don't live with our parents. And I thought we could do this well, right? I would do all the housework and you care for our daughter. She was actually struggling and I didn't know. So she was actually saying things like, hey, I need help with our daughter. But in my head, I was like, hey, actually, I'm doing my 50%, I'm doing the housework. So you do your 50% lah. She repeated it a few times, hey, I actually need help. And I realized that, oh, okay, maybe the 50% that's in my head is not actually 50%, right? And to her, she's actually saying, I need time for other things. So it actually took a few conversations for us to realize, okay, what are we actually needing from each other? So I think what I'm trying to say is, I think the first point of conversation where we need help would be to have that conversation with our spouse and to figure out, what would be most helpful for the both of us.
With the same question, Daniel, in Singapore, we always need to be on top of things.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that sometimes we really don't know what to do. So in this case, how did it affect perhaps your identity or maybe in how you view yourself?
Till today, actually last night, I was still struggling with a lot of self-doubt of whether I'm a good father and a good husband. The context is I'm doing this diploma that I have to stay up till about 2 to 3 a.m. and my wife has to handle my boy and his dinner. But thankfully, my parents are helping out. And I resonated with what Ben said about not knowing the language of help. So before our boy came out, my wife and I tried to structure kind of a safety plan per se with regards to, who are our support systems like. Similarly, Daniel will anchor the housework, Nicole, my wife, would anchor the baby and breastfeeding. But there are a lot of unexpected circumstances, difficulty in breastfeeding. My boy had jaundice and we had to rush to the hospital. I was with him for 4 days in the hospital. We didn't know who were our support systems until they showed up, my in-laws and my parents. But I found that I needed to exercise a lot of humility to receive help. Because throughout my life, hyper-independence has been my Achilles heel. I would work very hard, I would isolate myself, and I would try to bear the weight of the world. And of course, it would send me to some sort of distress here and there. But now the stakes are so much higher. The stakes is the well-being of my wife and the well-being of my child. And the humility to ask for help was a big step, a bigger step than I realized. I also feel that the idea of balance, we are in professions that add a lot of good to the world. That shook my identity because now it felt as though I couldn't excel in both things. When I had to go back to work, there was a lot of grief because I felt I had just kind of found my rhythm at home. And suddenly I was thrusted into the workplace. Workplace is great. We had good bosses at that time. Now also I have a great boss who's very supportive of family life, which I'm very grateful for. But I think the saving grace was having bosses, managers who were excelling in their roles while also desiring to excel as parents. It helped me with my anxiousness to think that it's one or the other.
So, you mentioned about asking for help. What helped you seek help? What was the first step you took in finding help?
My wife and I, we got married arguably at a young age in Singapore, had a child also at a young age in Singapore. So a lot of our peers, not married yet, don't have children. We found a community of parents who met monthly. And some of these parents have 3 children, and we will all meet at someone's house, have dinner, play games, have fathers share with each other, mothers share with each other, someone to take care of the children. That was a lifeline. We also went for a 9-week course provided by our church where they shared different pillars of married life. Also a lifeline. Painful because we had to bring our son out during his nap time every Friday night. But the community of couples there, the encouragement that we received, I would say that it gave us so much wind to our sails to continue trusting in the call to be a parent and also trusting the marriage. Because suddenly when the child came, the ship of marriage started to rock like crazy. Is this the right person I married? How am I going to live with this person? We live so differently. We have so many different values about parenting that's coming up, even when the child is 2 months old. What happens when the child is like 12 and we decide which school the child is to go to after? Oh my goodness. Yeah. But having older parents, people who have walked away, share with us, so important. So important.
Thanks for sharing that. It's really important that we ask for help and know where to find that help. And I'm glad that you found that community, that safe place for you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add also that my wife and I also reached out to a marriage counselor. And after things have stabilized a bit and we built a system where we can ask my mom to take care of our boy, she's very kind to take leave. And we just have that 1 to 2 hours with the counselor to work through our issues. So liberating to just put our beautiful son in someone else's hands and to focus on us. It's so important. Our best decision that we have made so far.
So Ben, hearing all this, right, what do you think new fathers need most from their partners, but often don't know how to ask or articulate that help from them?
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel, for sharing that. All your stories and experiences. And I think just hearing what he has shared, right? I think that first point would be to dare to initiate difficult conversations with our partner, with our spouse. Because especially in the early years of parenting, a lot of the focus is on the doing.
Yeah.
But we forget that we are married to someone we love, our best friend. When we don't think about that, we just see each other in a very functional role. So I think that first step would be to have intentional conversations with our partner to ask, how are you doing? And something that I try to do, or try to remind myself to do, even in this parenting journey with my wife for the past 19 months, I try to remember to tell her every day that I appreciate you. Thank you for being my wife. Thank you for being my wife, not the mother to my child. Thank you for being my wife. And if I may add on to maybe something that's been very helpful for me as a dad, is to have conversations with other dad friends. And, it's very common for moms to have mom chat groups, but it's not so common for dads to, talk about this in a larger group. So when we found out we were expecting, I took the courage to talk to a trusted older friend who had young kids. And he very willingly met me. We had a coffee. And it was so liberating to hear that actually it's okay to fail at the start. I think I needed to hear that from someone who has gone through it, right?
Yes.
Because if not, you are going in there thinking that, hey, I need to be that perfect dad already. Yeah, but hearing that from someone older, say that, you know what? You don't need to, right? In fact, no one has done that. No one is the perfect dad from the start. And I think along the way, even when Daniel and I connected, our first conversation, right, was about, hey, you are a young dad. I'm a young dad too. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And I think that has really helped us to grow our friendship.
Yeah, I resonate with that so much, right? Because you are in a battlefield and you're fighting for your life, fighting for sleep, fighting the expectations of the workplace and whatnot that you have committed to. And you feel like the whole world is crumbling down and you have no control sometimes, Things are, my boy, he was admitted to hospital for a week for stomach flu and it was very stressful. But having someone to say that it is okay, it was quite liberating. And for what young dads may need from their partners. So I find that moms are excellent at multitasking. And it's almost like a survival instinct. And sometimes it's not as though for dads, I have the privilege of working with a lot of couples in my work. It's not as though the dads don't want to be involved, but sometimes a lot of the dads feel like they disengage because the mom seems to be the expert. For myself also, I went through that phase. And it's so important to invest in that relationship with your child, even though you are like a silent lover. You wash the bottles, you clean, you change diaper, but every time the babies may run to the mom. But having that conversation of how I can be supportive of you and how you as a wife and a mother can be supportive of me in things that I struggle to be privy to. Reading the baby's cues, you may be better. Integrating my thoughts and what I've learned also from what I've read may be helpful. To be affirming is quite important. Yeah, the affirming voice. I think my wife and I, one thing we realized through therapy was that both of us had a critical voice of ourselves and of each other. And the way we gave feedback, it was very critical instead of encouraging, not very helpful. And now we are going through the process of relearning the language of love to each other.
No, I hear both of you that you were able to find community, you were able to find help and being able to voice your concerns to your spouse. How about those fathers who perhaps find it difficult to do it? what would be your advice to them? What will you say to them to encourage them?
I think there are more fathers like that than those who seek help. And the first thing I would say is to identify the signs of disassociation. Identify the signs of stress that may not be fruitful or helpful in your life. Sadly, in my work, I see that after the child comes up, there is a, maybe not addiction, but a compulsiveness towards drinking, gaming. Nothing wrong with gaming or drinking on its own, but the compulsiveness does show some degree of disassociation. Some may even go to the extent of seeing another partner, committing adultery or infidelity. And these things don't happen overnight. It is a source of stress. And your stress is to be honored. It is a sign that you need to be cared for. You need to be loved, right? And it's not that because the household is now structured all around the child, it's not as though that people are neglecting you. Of course, people are more concerned about the wife because her body just went through one of the most difficult things ever. But your stresses need attention. And when we acknowledge that, then identify the avenues for help.
Yeah.
So I think Focus has quite a structure for families, for young parents. I have a little WhatsApp group where we have dads just sharing their issues. And we don't know each other. We have never met in person before.
Not in real life.
Yeah, we've never met. I've been trying to organize, but I'm too stretched. But it's just that sharing, I'm struggling with my in-laws. Anyone got any ideas? I'm struggling to decide which baby bottle I want to buy. Why is my son or why is my daughter having so much phlegm after 4 weeks? These things take a load off our mental and emotional state. Send a message out. Hear a lot of perspectives. And my wife and I were discussing on which baby chair to buy, and then I just posted on the group. There was this incident that moved me. This guy, culturally in his family, they are not very privy to nannies. But he entered into a mixed marriage, and the default was to not have a nanny. But then they really couldn't take it. And he said, guys, I'm struggling. I need a nanny. And immediately, 4 people sent their contacts and just checked in on him after that. So these things are so important. You don't need to maybe like myself, I go for counseling. You don't need to do that, right? But you need to find like-minded parents who are willing to take the road less traveled in Singapore, right? To be a present, to be a loving father. Yeah. And it's so important to be decisive of who you want to include into your circle. Yeah. Because not everyone has the same goals. Yeah.
Yeah. I think if I may just add on to that, right? Maybe why dads don't want to ask for help would be, going back to that point about us having to have that perspective that, okay, we have got it all together. But maybe we just need to remind ourselves that, especially for young dads, this is the first time we are being a dad. Maybe we have seen from our dads, they are our own dads, right? Especially in our parents' generation, they are strong men who is able to do everything, but we never saw their journey of growth as a baby, right? So maybe we have to be a little kinder to ourselves to know that, okay, you know what? We have to give ourselves that leeway to learn, to also grow together with our wives, because if we get so caught up in our own journey of growth, we may accidentally end up, alienating our wife from that process, and therefore, growing that distance as we focus on the functional roles. And I think I wanted to add on this point, maybe as guys, because most of us have been through the army, and then we are trained to be very mission mode, right? So we're very focused on the doing. But I realized that maybe sometimes we get so caught up in the doing that we miss out on being that. And I'll give an example, right? Yesterday, I had that 3-hour window with my daughter. And I knew she didn't have a good night's sleep, so she was very cranky, very tired. So in my head, I knew, okay, I had to get her home, change her, cook her dinner, feed her, and then get her ready for bed. And then, being a 19-month-old, she's not the best eater. She was covered in rice, soup, veggies, whatever else you can think of that was in the dinner, right? And I was like, okay, it's a mess. So you eat, let's clean you up, drink milk, sleep. That was the process in my head. And then right there in the middle of dinner, she busted out a new dance move that she learned from school. And I had two options, right? I can either tell her can you please behave yourself, right? And eat your dinner and quickly finish. Or I could encourage her, join her in the dance, which I did. And sure, that took another 5 minutes in the day. Yeah. But I realized that, wow, that was probably what made my day, right, with her. So let's not miss out on being that.
That's so good. I was just sharing recently that as a young parent myself, I found it a struggle to eat at hawker centres, because there are no baby chairs. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And, it's also such a challenge to eat at food courts, right? Because you need to find a table, you need to find a baby chair, then you got to carry your food and carry your baby. Or, you notice that there's hardly any changing tables at the men's toilet.
Yeah.
So if you could change one thing about how society the workplace or healthcare systems could support new dads, what would make the biggest difference? Is it the infrastructure or is it the culture?
I would think culture first, right? I think as Daniel mentioned, you do need supportive colleagues because it is very difficult for parents to work office hours and still be present, especially if your kid is attending school and they have to pick up by a certain time. So I think having that supportive culture at work first, right, will really help. And then that will also give us that mental capacity and time, right, to be together with our children.
My perspective on this, for some reason, I'm thinking about the healthcare system. My wife and I went through the subsidized route and it was quite mechanical. You go in, I think we spoke to our doctor for like 2 minutes and we were out. And when we were at the polyclinic for follow-ups, I noticed that, because both of us are practitioners, the assessment for distress is not there. Yeah, I mean, that you have a form, think of suicide, think of this, think of harming your baby, all that. And any parent would want to present ourselves in a certain way. But I do think that the healthcare system and the social system being a bit more integrated can create a channel of care in your first 1 to 5 years of being a parent. Because also that's where the marital distress happens, you see. Personally, I think that's something that needs to be explored a bit more in Singapore. We are a bit too efficient for our good. Secondly, I do think it feels like being a parent in Singapore is really going against the culture. Although there has been policies for the past 10 to 15 years, somehow in the way that we are, the culture doesn't feel like it celebrates families. I don't know where to start, but I do think that the bread and butter issues need to be spoken about a lot more. The cost of living. I mean, I work with a lot of families who are poor, underprivileged, and the bread and butter issues hit them very much so, even especially now in the climate that we are in. And I feel that parents need to feel a sense of validation when motions are pushed in different parts of society. Currently, it still feels that things are not moving as quick as how parents want it to. But I noticed that there's a part of society that are still resilient in wanting to be parents. And it's not the doing of policy, actually. It's because of individual belief, family's culture, family support system. Personally, for me, workplace has been a big blessing. Big blessing. My boss, my team leads, always checking with me about my family. Always. It's a lifeline.
Yeah, hearing both of you share about the workplace, I think I'm also appreciative of my workplace and how we at Focus, we're not just doing the talking about family, we're actually walking the talk. We actually check in with each other.
Yeah.
We actually learn from the older parents here. And to see that actually this can be done, celebrating families and making sure that this is not something that we say, but we actually do. In your own ways, Daniel, with your WhatsApp group and contributing there, I think you are making that change for the young dads, and for Ben, being an open channel for the young people in your care and, just being able to relate with them. I think that's also contributing to this whole environment and culture that we're talking about. We really appreciate both of you sharing your experiences, your thoughts. We're already running out of time, but before we end today's episode, Ben, any last words you'd like to share with our listeners, to perhaps the dads or the soon-to-be dads?
Yeah, sure. And I would quote one of the dad friends that I spoke with as I was preparing for my child to arrive. Right? He told me that you are already the best father that your child can have by just being that. And I would add also, remember, don't get caught up in just doing, right? Have fun being a dad.
So good. I enjoy being a dad.
Yeah.
I believe, Daniel, you enjoy being a dad too. Any last words for our listeners?
I think watering a little bit every day is better than storms or tsunamis. So just watering a bit every day. A little smile, a little hug, a kiss, I love you, to your child and to your wife. Do us a lot more than you think.
Thank you both once again for being here with us. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you.
So if you're interested to find out more fatherhood resources, do visit our website at www.family.org.sg. Go to resources and downloads. We have a Fatherhood Survival 101 e-guide available for download, so do check it out. That's all that we have for today. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. Do keep tuning in to the Parent Ed podcast to learn and to grow in your parenting journey.